Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is the Asus ROG Strix Scar 3. This is a premium gaming laptop from Asus, compact 15.6 inch screen, and a really high spec in a premium high quality package that's really interesting. Now I've done a short initial thoughts and overview with the pros and cons of this laptop, which I'll link to in the description, but this is a more in-depth review as I've been playing around with it for 2 weeks now, using it daily for gaming, working and having fun, and I'm happy to report it's a really interesting gaming laptop. Now, this is a premium gaming laptop that will set you back quite a lot of money, but it does have a number of features that make it really interesting. First, that stands out is obviously this RGB lighting underneath. So you get RGB lighting bar that goes around the sides, front, and also has RGB lighting on the logo on the rear and on the keys. You'll also note this sort of brushed aluminium finish to it, which is quite common now on Asus laptops, and just a general really premium look and feel to it. On the rear you get a Ethernet port, which is not too common nowadays, HDMI, and a USB-C that's DisplayPort capable. A bit odd not to have a DisplayPort output, to be honest, but you've got the DisplayPort USB-C if you need it, and the power connector. On the left-hand side you have 3 USB ports and a mixed 3.5mm jack for headphones and microphone. That is one of the downsides that I mentioned previously, is the USB connection is only on the left, apart from the USB-C, so there's nothing on the right. It also comes with this Keystone dongle, which is kind of gimmicky but mildly interesting perhaps. It's basically a little key that you can plug into the laptop and program your settings within the ROG Armoury Crate in your favourite settings, and then you can stick that in there and it allows for personalisation of that key. It also works as a shadow drive if you connect it with your Asus account. Not something I've played around with in great depth, to be honest, but another interesting option for you. You can buy multiple keys and then swap them over, and you get a nice little jingle when you plug it in, and then it changes the settings. Now, this is a premium laptop, as I said. This one has a really high spec to it. This is a Core i9-9880H CPU, 32GB of 2666 MHz RAM, 15.6 inch 1080p display that's capable of 240Hz, and, most interestingly perhaps, a 1TB NVMe drive as the standard main boot drive. Obviously this is a certain spec and you can get other specs to it, which I'll link to in the description. Another highlight for me is the trackpad, which doubles as a numpad with a slight press in the top right corner, which is pretty cool. So you lose the numpad on the right hand side because it's a compact keyboard, compact laptop, but you get it come back in a sort of touchscreen style instead. You can see the sort of membrane style keyboard is actually quite pleasant and easy to use, very comfortable. One annoyance I found with it was the enter key, which is thin and kind of annoying. That's a layout that you see quite commonly nowadays. And then there are easy access buttons for fan speed, so you can switch between the different fan speeds, and I'll go into that in a bit more depth later. And if you press the function key, you can easily change the lighting sync and schema on by pushing left and right on that, and adjust the brightness up and down. One thing I've noticed, I couldn't find a way to adjust separately the keyboard, the underlighting and the logo. So if you have the lighting on, it's all on or all off. You can change between the different colours though, so you can and you obviously get the different schemes as usual. So you get rainbow, breathing, static, various other different ones that you can play around with, and you can set within the Armoury Crate software, which it comes installed on there. You can get through the Windows Store, and it also, you can get an app on your phone so you can remotely control certain things, which I'll show you a bit later on. Now, as I said, I've been using this for gaming in various different ways, and I'll be able to talk to you in a bit more depth about that. It is pretty capable. There are a few niggles with the gaming, first of which is it gets very hot and very loud if you're playing with it on your lap, which I find a lot, to be honest, with these high-end gaming laptops. I mean, it sports a RTX 2070 GPU, so it's capable of ray tracing, and it's obviously got a high-end Core i9 Intel processor, but it is capable of running Crysis. You can get 530 FPS on the load screen as well, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, it's a bit daft to test, but I wanted to see if it could handle Crysis on max settings. So ran Crysis forced 1080p and turned everything up to max. And side note, Crisis still looks amazing all these years later, and it runs really well, nice and smooth. You can see even at these settings, obviously this is recorded with shadow play, but it's only getting between 60 and 120 FPS on a game that's 12 years old. That's not a gripe against the laptop though, because it performed pretty well. Then to put it through a more reasonable test, as requested by one commenter on the previous videos, to see how it would stack up in CSGO or Fortnite. I haven't got Fortnite on my machine, and to be honest I can't bring myself to play it at the moment, but CSGO I have got access to, so I'll give that a go. Now I ran it on maximum settings, and I wanted to see how it handled that first, because obviously you could then run it on low to get a higher performance, but you've got a 240 Hertz refresh rate on this screen. Obviously that means if you can get your FPS up that high, you're actually experiencing that fully, you're getting the most out of your screen and the power of the machine for a really smooth pro-based experience. And I did actually manage it occasionally with the settings on high. If you turn them down to medium, which I also did, then it did go over 200, but otherwise it was in the high 190 range, and you'll see a little bit of that. You'll also note that I've got a sound level meter here because I wanted to demonstrate, not right this second, I want to demonstrate just how loud the fans get under load. Now that is a thing of note as well. One of my experiences with this laptop is basically if you're running games on it, you need to have the fans on turbo, running at maximum to get the smoothest experience. I found that several times when I was running them on balanced mode, trying to keep the fans quiet so I could just enjoy the game. Although the game would run fine, the FPS wasn't quite as high, and also then I'd eventually hit a wall where you'd suddenly hit a massive lag spike and a frame rate drop, a substantial frame rate drop from like 90 frames to 30 or something like that, and you could really feel it, or even lower sometimes. And only turning the fans into turbo or waiting for it to calm down a bit would be enough to then fix that problem. If you have it on turbo, it runs a lot smoother and it runs well. The only problem is that its fans get very loud, and I'll show you in a minute just how loud. Looking at over 60 decibels on the sound level meter. Now, obviously, looking at it now, it's not a fair representation because I'm using the speakers, and so it's picking that up. I'll show you in a minute without any sound on. Now, the other thing to note here is the speaker quality. The speakers are actually fairly good. I did find even on maximum, they weren't quite enough to drown out the sound of the fans, and that fan noise gets really obnoxious after a very short period of time. I did find I had to switch to a headset quite a lot, which is why I wanted to try and play it without having the fans on turbo, but you just can't manage it reasonably on a decent high-end game. It's kind of frustrating. If you've got something with this amount of power, you want to be running your games on the most beautiful settings, right? Unless you want to put everything on medium and play like a pro, so you can get really high frames, but not necessarily need all that power. But the noise of the fans is very obnoxious, and it's too much. And you find that a lot with gaming laptops, especially something that's thin and compact like this. It packs a lot of power under the hood. You're going to get very hot. It gets hot on the lap. It gets hot to use. It gets noisy, very noisy, and that's one of my main gripes with this machine, is the noise that it puts out. However, it is a good performer. It does really well. It's done really well on all the different tests. I run it through various 3D Mark tests. I also ran a benchmark on Shadow of the Tomb Raider that got over 55 frames per second, I believe. And as you can see here, it's getting well in the top 100, nearly 200 range on high settings, don't forget, on CSGO. And it does a good job, nice and smooth experience with the fans on turbo. Yeah, and it's a pretty joyful experience. The screen itself is also really good. You can adjust the visuals within it, and that's one of the things I like about these new Asus laptops, is the Armoury Crate software lets you change the visuals of different styles. So you've got SPS, racing, vivid, eye care mode, which is great if you're using spreadsheets or whatever during the day and work, and you want to take away the blue light and make it easier on the eye. You can do that, switch into Windows mode and whatever else. And the screen itself is beautiful when gaming. One thing I did note is it doesn't, even at max brightness, it doesn't seem to get very bright. Now, I didn't really notice that while I was playing. However, when I was working, it was really prominent. And I think if you were trying to use this outside, you'd probably struggle. I got some footage of it outside where you can basically see it was a bright day and it just can't handle that brightness levels very well. I wouldn't say this is great outside, basically. It's not bright enough, it's not vivid enough. However, for indoor use, gaming, generally it's pretty fantastic and it does a really good job from multiple angles. Then obviously you've got those different settings that you can tweak between and find a preference on as well. The fact that it can smash out such high frames is also appealing. Now I'm going to show you the fan levels and what that's like. Here, it's getting the low decibels. Obviously, it's just turned on. I found after playing the game, which I'll also show you, it's pushing 60. If it's been under load, 60 to 65, maybe 70 decibels, painfully loud. And I just wanted to show you quickly what it's like. If you press the button to boot up the Armoury Crate, you just got a one button press and you can get straight into that. You can obviously change the fan settings within there and get more power out of it. You can change various other things as well as the lighting and whatnot. And you can also, as I said, just press the button on the keyboard to go between the different fan modes. And you can play around with the software and adjust various speeds of things and enhance that experience. There's also access to the sonic sound settings and things like that. If you're familiar at all with the Armoury Crate software, I'll link to that in the description to show you all the different things that you can do with it. One thing of note, which I will show you a bit later on, is you can also control it with the app on your phone. As I said, you don't seem to be able to adjust the keyboard lighting from the app, which is a bit odd. You can do that within the software and desktop, but you can adjust the fan speed and the screen visuals and also monitor the performance, check on temperatures and speeds and things like that within the app. So that's one benefit and a nice way to not have to bother with alt-tabbing or worrying about that. The software itself is pretty easy to use and updates nicely. Now you can see muting the speakers after being in the middle of CSGO, you're looking at 62.5 decibels. And then back in Windows, it's doing it again. Now this is obviously after we've been playing the game, so the fans and everything have been at full tilt and it's still hot, and it's obviously cooling down now, but it's 60 decibels, which it's going to be difficult to compare. I haven't done any other videos with that as a comparison yet, unfortunately. I only just purchased this level meter, but you just have to take my word for it that it is very loud. It's just too loud, unfortunately. But if you've got a good gaming headset, it's not going to be a problem. The mic on the laptop also, it doesn't seem to pick up that fan noise. So it's not been an issue when gaming with friends on Discord. They weren't constantly complaining about hearing the white noise in the background. Otherwise that would have been very upsetting. But yeah, I'd recommend using a headset. But that is a gripe as well. There are only 3 USB ports, as I said, which means that you can only plug in several things. It depends on your headset setup. But if you have a USB headset and you want to plug in a USB keyboard and a USB mouse as well, you've then used up all the sockets basically, apart from the USB-C one on the rear. So it limits you to what you can plug in. Also the fact that it's all on the left, I find a bit odd, because if you're plugging in a mouse, naturally you plug that in on the right. And you can run the cable around the back and plug it in. You can see that I'm basically finding small niggles with the machine, because generally it's done a really good job and I've really enjoyed using it. Here you can see maximum brightness outside. Obviously it's not plugged in, but it is at maximum brightness. And it was a fairly bright day where the screen just is quite dim, unfortunately. Now, another thing I tested is plugging it into a larger screen. So this is a 1440p ultra-wide monitor. It's running through the HDMI cable. It's Cuisine where I'm running that on the main screen, and obviously it's being powered by the laptop. And it ran pretty smoothly, although the frames weren't nearly as high. It was only getting around 60 frames per second, not much higher than that really. This monitor goes up to 100 Hz, so it is possible to get more out of it. Unfortunately, I couldn't manage it. One point of note which you'll see in a second, however, and I was really surprised by this, but basically trying to run to an external screen and record using OBS just didn't work at all. The frames completely bottomed out. I was looking at about between 25 and 30 frames per second and lower, and it was painfully so. So it's just in the process of setting it up here when someone came into the game and started to try and attack me, which was rude while I was AFK. Managed to deal with them. You probably can't see it, so you'll have to take my word for it, but the frames quickly became unbearable and I had to turn OBS off and stop recording because just couldn't manage it. And it's not been a problem recording footage using the laptop without being plugged into another screen. So if you're planning on streaming or recording anything, the laptop itself could probably handle it. But if you want to push it out to another screen at the same time, probably going to be a problem. I just found the games were unfortunately unplayable, or at least Cuisine Royale was. And that's with the fans on maximum and everything, obviously up to date. So it just struggled with it, which I was surprised by, considering the spec. It couldn't handle it. Although you are asking it to put out to 2 screens at once. Maybe some settings could change around. Now, quickly taking the underside off just to show you what it's like and the design of it. I was curious whether you could actually add any extra drives in or play around and upgrade it in any way. One thing of note is you have to be careful when taking it apart because the LED bar around the underneath and sides is attached to this. So if you do want to do this, you have to be careful doing it and how you put it back together. Otherwise you might damage that. Unfortunately, there is no spare NVMe slot. You can access the main drive to remove it if you so wish, and you can see that underneath the fans. So you can see all the heatsink fans and the 2 fans, main fans, and then underneath on the bottom left there's the main NVMe SSD drive, and you can remove that and theoretically upgrade it. So this one comes with the 1 terabyte, so you could theoretically buy a 2 terabyte and swap it out, but unfortunately there's no way to add an extra one, which is a bit of a downer, I think. However, the fact that it comes with such a high spec anyway is probably fine. You can see, you can access everything else basically quite easily and see all the different setup of it. Quite nice, bit of a porn for you if you're into this sort of thing. And it comes apart pretty easily and goes back together easily as well, as long as you remember which screws will go where. The next thing I wanted to show you was a taste of the app. So this is the Armoury Crate app that's available for Android or iOS, and I'll leave links in the description. Basically, you can connect that with your laptop. Now what you need to do is launch the Armoury Crate software and then click to connect, and you launch the app and you can basically scan a QR code and it easily pairs the 2 devices. Once you've done that, you can then use the app to control various things. That includes the fan speed, so you can see here you can switch between Windows, Silent, Performance and Turbo mode and the fan speed. And that allows you to easily adjust the performance of the laptop on the fly. So if you're in the middle of a game and you want to do it, you can just boot up the software on the app and then do that. You can also see system information, so what hertz and things everything's running at, and how the computer is performing remotely without having to see the app as well. So it's kind of a geeky, nerdy thing that you can do. Another thing you can do is you can adjust the screen visuals, which is one of the things I like to play around with. As I said, being able to switch between the different modes. You can also turn the Sonic Studio on off, but you can see the game visuals. You've got racing, scenery, RTS, FPS, all those different ones. You can easily switch between them here, and you'll see that adjust in this video and on the screen. So you just click it, you press OK, change whichever one you want, and then it changes automatically on the screen. That's nice to be able to do that. One thing, as I said, odd, you can't change the lighting. You can't change the keyboard lighting or backlighting at all in there, so that's kind of odd. But it's another easy way to control your laptop and a nice touch. I've seen it elsewhere on the Zephyrus S. Well, this has been a pretty in-depth review. Hope you found it useful. This has been The Provoked Prawn. Please like, subscribe and come back for more in future. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for your time. Have a great life. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hope you enjoyed it, found it useful, interesting or humorous, or all of the above. If you did, please be sure to give me a thumbs up, and also drop me a comment and let me know what you liked. And if you really didn't like it, please let me know the reasons why as well, with constructive feedback that I can use to improve my future videos. Any feedback is always appreciated. And if you have the time, please consider subscribing to my channel so you get to see more awesome content from me in future. I'm always looking to grow my follower base and also to keep carrying on producing interesting content on a variety of gaming peripherals, gaming videos, tips, tricks, unboxings and all sorts of other things. Let me know what you like from my channel and if there's anything you'd like to see more of. Thanks very much for your time. Have a great life.